Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my illustrious co-host, Matt Scott.
Hi, I'm here in the corner.
Yeah, and we are not only at the Overland Expo West, but we are because of the gracious consideration of Mike McMod, we are in his beautiful Earth Roamer LTI, beautiful vehicle, and it gives us the chance to have a little more space. So we're recording it here at the event, and we have Duncan Barbour with us, and Duncan is someone who I have looked up to for well over a decade since I heard his story and I learned about his involvement with the Camel Trophy. He's known as one of the true gentlemen within the space. I've never heard a ill word spoken about him because he's really built a reputation of not only experience, but global travel. Duncan was the global event coordinator for the Camel Trophy, and now he's part of the 7P team, and he has literally launched vehicles like the Jeep Wrangler in Africa and other events around the world, traveled around the world. Duncan, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Scott. The introduction is way beyond what I would expect, and I feel very honored that you say that sort of thing.
Yes.
I mean, we can start over and be more insulting.
Yeah, well, no, please. I'm more used to the insults. Please, nobody says those sort of things.
Oh, and now a word from one of the supporters of our podcast, Red Arc. At Overland Journal, we go off-grid every chance we get. From the most technical trails to crossing continents, it's no match for Red Arc's Tow Pro Elite. This brake controller has been torture tested in the toughest place on the planet, the Australian Outback. Easy to install, its dash mount remote head makes for quick calibration and ensures you won't be hitting your knees. You can seamlessly switch between proportional for the highway and user-controlled for the steepest, most rugged trails out there. You may not trust the terrain you're on, but you can always trust Red Arc's Tow Pro Elite. Tow with confidence by visiting redarcelectronics.com. Well, one of the things that I am fascinated to learn a little bit about is what events happened in your life? What decisions did you make in your life that led you to the point of being able to be the global event coordinator for the Camel Trophy? Talk about that.
I suppose it's kind of it's a long story, obviously, because I'm 6 years old now. But what led up to that? I mean, the first thing that happened was, I come from a family of petrol heads anyway, so I've always had an interest in vehicular travel and that kind of thing. My great uncle was the first person to drive a vehicle up Ben Nevis, which probably you could almost describe as one of Ford's remote off-road PR exercises. Okay. Not that Ford had anything to do with it, but that part of my family ran the Ford dealership in Edinburgh.
Okay, cool.
During the war and stuff. So they had a lot of military vehicles coming in and things like that. And in the board table one day, I suppose he would have been my great uncle, turned round to his 7 sons, who were also part of the business, and said, we need to do something to promote how good the Model T Ford is. I want you to drive it up Ben Nevis.
And how tall is Ben Nevis?
It's not tall compared to your mountains, but it's the highest mountain in UK.
Okay.
Height-wise, I should know how high it is.
I know I've driven by it.
Oh, yeah.
It's at least a couple hundred feet, isn't it?
It's at least a couple hundred feet.
Dozens and dozens of feet.
Yeah.
So about the height of this Earth Roamer that we're in.
Yes. No, not quite so high. But anyway, it's a pretty major feat. There is a track that goes up, or at that time there's still a track goes up it because lots of people walk up it. But
sure,
there was a kind of horse track that went up to the top because there was an a meteorological station up there.
Okay, but a vehicle had never done it.
It's always been horse and cart going up.
Amazing.
So Uncle Harry was tasked with that, and he went ahead and did it. And it was even today, there's only been a handful of people done it. He was the only person to have done it twice, because 10 years later they decided to do it in the Model A Ford.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that's kind of my, I kind of feel I've got off-roading in my genes.
That pedigree.
Based on that pedigree.
Yeah.
But it was a major feat. It would be a major achievement now in a modern day vehicle. You would still have quite a few problems in a few areas. He made bridging ladders to get across bits of the burn. They were blowing up peat hags to try and create a route through them.
Wow.
Obviously you couldn't do that now, but
sure,
there is some archive material on YouTube, which is one of the BBC archives, and you can actually Google it and see them doing it. And there is a shot looking from a distance, looking at some guys poking poking into the shelf of this peat hag, and the next thing scurrying away. It's all like it's all on high speed motion, scurrying away, and then they blow it up, and the next thing the vehicle drives through it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And that's how you get to the top.
That's how you get to the top. He was using traction aids. They weren't Max Tracks, I'm sorry to say.
Well,
But
I'm sorry we weren't there at the time.
Well, if you had been, that would have done the job. They wrapped rope around the rear wheels of the thing as an extra traction aid.
That's so cool.
And there was places where I remember Dad telling me some of the story. There's places where it was so steep they reversed up because reverse gear was lower than first gear.
Sure.
So they reversed up bits and pieces.
Well, and that would also help get traction essentially to the front, which is where the weight would be as well. So so they loaded up the back of it.
And didn't the Model T have a hand throttle? Like they're different to drive than a modern car.
I've never driven one, but I've heard they're really complicated actually.
Yeah, hard to drive.
They're quite hard to drive. Yeah.
And you have to adjust the points and stuff as you're going along. I think it's quite it's quite a feat. That's amazing.
So that's kind of genetics, but that kind of gets away from your question, which was what led up to Camel Trophy. And I guess that, my first experience in a 4-wheel drive was back when I was 10 years old. My dad taking me out in a Land Rover. An old Series 3 that we had into a field, and I'm just dragging it around there. And gradually, because he worked in the plant, he had a plant hire company. I had access. I used to go in on a Saturday morning and work with mechanics in the workshop there, doing all the kind of grotty jobs, scraping rust off chassis and power washing things. But I had access to seeing them rebuilding engines, and we were putting tracks on machines and all sorts. So. And as an aside of that, I was able to drive whatever was in the yard at the time. That's where a lot of that driving experience came from. Then moved on to working on farms and driving tractors, anything up to combine harvesters, pea viners, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I was doing off-roading in my job, but the UK isn't a big place to go off-roading, especially in Scotland, because all the land is private, so we don't have access to the kind of amazing spaces and drives that you guys can go on in the US. We just don't have that in the UK.
Don't you have like a green lane?
Well, there's green lane stuff in England,
but not in
Scotland.
Yeah, interesting.
No. In fact, the last one, which was the Kodiak Pass, which was an old part of General Wade's military roads, that was eventually closed down. And I think my brother was one of the last people to drive that.
Wow.
And there's really nothing left to do unless it's on private land. But 1985, I saw an advert in 4-Wheel Drive magazine in Scotland, and it was a full-page advert with a Camel Trophy lozenge at the top, which of course in its own right immediately pulls your eyes to it. And it was an advert looking for applicants to apply for the first British team on Camel Trophy in 1986 in Australia. So that kind of caught my eye, and I thought, because of course it all started off 1,000 miles of adventure, the ultimate off-road challenge kind of thing. And I thought, I'd quite like to try that. So I applied for it and was lucky enough to get chosen to be one of the final, not the final one, but I got down to the last, I think it was about 40 of us. And the information came back. All they gave you was a map reference. You have to be at this map reference at this time on this date.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that was it. And I remember I mentioned it to a farming friend of mine, a guy who I used to service for in his rally car, and I knew the family. They're a big farming family in East Lothian. And I said, I'm heading off to this thing called Camel Trophy. And he said, what, you mean the selection thing? I went, yeah. He said, I applied for it. Well, he hadn't applied for it. His wife had applied for it for him. And so off we headed. We headed to that together.
How fun.
And actually, that was for the 86 event. And actually, Ronnie and I found out afterwards when I was working on the event that they were looking at Ronnie and I as quite a strong team.
Sure.
And we both got down to the last 6, but never made the cut as the final 2 members or the 2 standby members of the team.
Sure.
And it wasn't until many years later when I actually was working for Camel Trophy that I found out that part of the reason was that they felt that they couldn't, from an advertising and PR perspective, they couldn't have 2 Scotsmen in the British team.
Well, yeah, that was a different time even then. Yeah. So interesting.
So that's kind of how I ended up on trophy. I was a finalist for the British team three years on the trot, each time getting down to the last cut of 6.
Sure.
And eventually I kind of said, well, 3 times, if I can't get into the team now, I don't think I'm going to get that far. I knew they would keep asking me back if I wanted to apply. But I felt, no, it's time for me to step down and let someone else have that chance. Because that's the way I looked at it. I said, well, if I'm getting this far, but not making the final cut, then someone else might be able to make that and actually get in. So
sure.
And I said to them, I'll step back from this, but if you ever need any help with, selections or training or anything like that, because by this time I've been through 3 rounds of training with Land Rover and all the guys there. And obviously been learning more and more about the basics of driving properly off-road. And I thought, well, I think I'd have value for them as part of the selection process.
What was your first job? What did they hire you to do first?
Well, I mean, after that, I ended up heading out to South America. I went out to the Middle East first and then South America, working for a company called Exodus Expeditions. And I was driving an overland truck for them. Actually, probably what you could describe as the first overland vehicles like this. So it was a Bedford truck, probably about 10, 12 ton rated. It had a big box on the back, but really primitive compared to what we're sitting in today.
Sure.
Big box on the back with bench seats, windows like this. There was up above, there was kind of just hanging nets for soft stuff. And under each of the seats, each passenger had some room to put their bag and their belongings. And then the other boxes were taken up with dried goods for food.
Sure.
When you went outside the truck, at the front of the main passenger compartment, or maybe I should call it the habitat, as we do, it had what we call the dog box. That was full of tents, which the crew, the people on the truck were using to sleep in. And then we went to the side. There was also a water tank there, which proved very useful once when we were getting shot at down a nasty track somewhere in Argentina, or it might be in Venezuela. It's going back a long time. So you had a water tank there for potable water. And then down below the truck, hanging alongside the chassis, we had a cook box, which you opened out, that had all the pans in it. And as you opened the door out, 4 burners on that.
Oh, cool.
For gas. That was it,
So you were the driver of this Bedford.
Driver and guide.
Yeah, driving around South America.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So we started in Bogota, Colombia, and we would do, I think it was 9 countries. You'd start one trip going clockwise, and the next trip you go anti-clockwise. And each trip was about 4 months.
And how long did you do that for?
I did that for just over a year. And then I got a call from Ian Chapman, who was one of the guys that I'd been through selections with, who's now working on the event. He was the event manager, and he'd asked me if I could help with bringing in trucks. And he knew I was out in South America, and asked if I could help with bringing the Land Rover vehicles into Manaus, which is where the event was starting from in 1989. And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to help, Ian, but I'm in the middle of a trip and I can't just step off the truck and leave these passengers in Brazil when I've got to get them up to Colombia.
Sure.
And he said, well, listen, we're looking for someone to assist me. And he said, I think you'd be ideal for the job. When are you back in Colombia? When can you be home? And I said, well, if you think there's definitely a chance of a job, I'll put my resignation in now to Exodus. And I said, I'll be back in Colombia whenever it was. I'll book a flight home and come straight into the offices in London for an interview.
Wow.
So, and that in itself was strange, because I remember Ian saying to me, he said, when you first arrived, because bear in mind, I've been out on the road for over a year. So I arrived with a backpack. I kind of had a Venezuelan style cowboy hat on. I was probably looking pretty scruffy. And
Perfect.
That was me walking into RJ Reynolds RJR Tobacco in London, in a place called Meridian House, which was right next to Clarence House, where the Queen Mother was staying. And I walked in and said, I'm in for an interview with Ian Chapman and Duncan Lee. And the secretary looked at me and went, really? And she phoned up and she said, there's someone very scruffy at the front door wanting to see you. And he said, that'll be Duncan Barbour. So I went up, had my interview, and Duncan Lee, who was in charge of sponsorships and special events, said, yeah. And that was me starting a week later.
Fantastic.
Literally, I probably a fortnight later, I'd gone home, seen the family. And a fortnight later, I was stepping onto a plane heading out to Moscow and then out to Irkutsk and Bratsk in Siberia to start working on setting up the event for 1990.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And there was mentions of KGB at that event?
Yeah, well, yes, because that was right at the start of the whole perestroika and glasnost thing happening in Russia, or the Soviet Union as it was at that time, because we kind of, the event progressed, we went through that whole cusp. It was a difficult event to set up as well, because the Russians obviously saw us coming in as an American tobacco company. There was dollar signs there for them. And we clearly had money to spend to set the event up. It was the first motorsport event ever to happen there. We were bringing journalists from all around the world, which was completely alien to the Soviet Union as well. We were bringing all our own comms equipment. Satellite communication stuff, radios. So naturally, there was quite a big interest from the KGB, and we know for a fact that there were KGB people assigned that were there with us. Although nobody ever said, so and so, Yuri there is from the KGB, but
you would expect it.
Yeah, you knew because he was packing a gun, and
it was for the Bears.
Yes, that's what he used to say actually. But that was a really interesting event, and it was going up. The permissions and stuff were going up as high as Boris Yeltsin at that time.
Incredible.
So yeah, we had some very strange meetings. I remember the Russians trying to charge pencil fees for journalists. So they want to charge for everything. Oh yes, journalists will have pencil to write with, so we'll charge you a pencil fee for that, and then there'll be a camera fee for that. And I remember some of the negotiations starting off at millions and millions of dollars, and we kind of gradually worked them down to lower figures. We secured things like we hired 2 Antonov 124s to move all the vehicles from the UK out to Bratsk, where the event started, and that was a major number in itself. When they arrived at Farnborough Airport, that was the first time Russian military aircraft had ever landed on British soil.
Incredible.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing.
We need to get you a T-shirt. I've hired an Antonov.
Can I get one too, please?
Oh yeah, you've done that. Apparently, I'm the only one that has it.
Well, that's soon enough. Soon enough.
Oh look, it's raining for the people outside of the Earth Roamer.
Oh yes,
we didn't even notice.
So yeah, I mean that was a major achievement. They brought their own brass band with them because it was such a big thing for them as well. It was piloted by top brass from the Russian military. Of course, in Russia, the military run the Air Force as well. They were virtually brand new aircraft.
Wow.
So we're all spick and span. And when they arrived, I mean, at that time they had no credit cards or no mobile phones. In fact, I didn't even have a mobile phone at that time. They weren't even around in 90, if I remember. It's kind of a wee bit later that the bricks appeared, the big phone for the box. Yeah, they arrived and we put them up in hotels. We gave them money. We took them to a supermarket, and that was apparently that I wasn't there when they did it, but the PR company took them out to the supermarket to spend some of the money that they'd been given. And when they opened the doors, everyone just went whoosh, different directions. They thought, oh my God, actually, what if some of these folk decide to defect?
Flower.
Sure.
There was that kind of concern.
No question.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, they just would fade into the distance.
Yeah, but they all came back, fortunately.
Yeah. Wow.
But that was a hell of an event, I have to say.
I can imagine.
Quite interesting.
And what were some of the highlights of the Russia event that you can think of from the actual competition?
Things like staging all the teams, and we did all the vehicles by this time were out in Bratsk because we'd flown them there. But the teams came into Moscow before going out to Bratsk for the start of the event. I think having that whole, we managed to close off St. Peter's Square, where that big church is with all the beautiful balls on the top.
Oh, Red Square, yeah.
Red Square, that was it. So we closed that off and we're able to have a big function there. And
I think I've seen that photo with all the
you will have done.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
that's you. That's cool.
That was pretty special. And then as far as dramatic starts, it wasn't quite the same as likes of Tanzania, where we drove for 2 hours out of the city and the roads were just lined with, they reckon there was millions of people lining the roads as we drove out of the city for the Dar es Salaam for the start of the event.
Oh, wow.
But Russia was just, no one kind of ever dreamed that you could go and do that in Russia at that time. So from an event organization perspective, that was pretty incredible, especially when you think it was quite a really small core group doing it all. And setting it up.
And what area of Siberia was that?
Well, that was Eastern Siberia, I think it was. So we flew out to Bratsk, and then we basically it was Lake Baikal, basically.
Oh, Lake Baikal.
Yeah, so we started in Bratsk and basically worked our way around Lake Baikal to Irkutsk.
Yeah. So, and then you flew them back out of Irkutsk.
And then we flew them back out of Irkutsk.
And you would have had to have taken the ferries across the river Aldan at that point.
No, well, we never actually, we didn't go that way. I think we took the southern, it's a long time ago now, we took the southern route around Baikal, and it kind of followed existing tracks. And then we used a lot of the old kind of gulag roads that had been built by prisoners of war. So at one point we're driving along tracks where, you could see the remains of the wood that was underneath there. And part of that was really difficult because normally nobody drives in those areas because they're called winter roads because they're all frozen. In the winter you can travel them, but come the summer, they're not great. I mean, we did spend 2 days driving a river at one point to try and avoid a section that was almost impassable. But true Camel Trophy style, we always managed to find a route around the most difficult bits. So that was quite good. There's pictures of long streams of Camel Trophy vehicles going down a river with people sitting on the bonnet, spotting the big rocks and things underneath the water. So,
you just couldn't do that now.
No, absolutely. And
it's crazy. It's just like perfect timing, perfect place.
Yeah. And in fact, recently I had a question posed to me by a manufacturer, which was, if you were to run a Camel Trophy event now, or in 2022, for instance, what would it look like? So you think back to all those classic pictures on Trophy and the things that made it look spectacular, like, vehicles on a side slope with a big banking on one side and everybody hanging off the side of them to try and keep them on four wheels. We couldn't do that now because of health and safety.
Sure.
You'd all those kind of things, people jumping on the top of the roof racks and things like this. You can't do that. Even the closeness of winching operations and stuff like this, and where we're trying to move vehicles quickly through areas because of health and safety, you'd have to be going, well, you can't really do that. Or you as the organizers would have a duty of care to ensure that nobody got hurt. And of course we had that duty of care back then, but the health and safety side of it wasn't as robust as it is now. So you wouldn't, someone jumping onto the side of a 110 and holding onto the roof rack, you just couldn't do that. Right at the beginning of the training, you'd have to say, well, you can't jump on the side of moving vehicles.
But I would also submit that you had some of the most accomplished drivers and athletes in the world. Did you really have that many bad injuries?
No, we didn't actually. And I do think that was down to the training that we got from Land Rover. So the driving training side of it, and also the training that was done by all the individual Camel Trophy markets, and the training that we did at the international selections, where we brought them all into one place and put them through various selection processes to assist each of the markets to work out which 2 out of the 4 that had come would be the actual team members. And safety was what we did, drum safety in there all the time, and awareness, and trying to make sure that, a bit like what we do with the 7P training as well, is trying to get people to make good decisions about what they're doing. We're also talking about good decisions about what equipment they're buying as well, with regards to 7P side of training. On Camel Trophy, you didn't have to worry about that because all your equipment was supplied to you. We didn't have, the majority of injuries on an event would be cuts, some lacerations, which would be stitched up at the time. Lots of bruises, I mean, the guys were fit because they had been training for it. And, I even remember going back to when I suddenly realized that getting selected for Trophy, you had to be an all-rounder on a variety of things, but you also had to be fit. So I would do a lot of running training and stuff like that before a selection. The teams were generally, they were pretty fit and they were looking out for each other. I mean, the one thing about Trophy was this brotherhood almost. People were looking out for other people on the trail, so we were, in between competition time, everybody in Trophy was one big team. And that's how, Camel Trophy was able to get through some of the conditions that we got through, whatever nature threw at you, whatever that country threw at you with regards to how difficult the roads could be, we got through because we had the manpower to be able to build bridges or rebuild bridges. We had the manpower to pull vehicles. I mean, I remember on the Tanzania event, we started off, the rains hadn't come, and within 24 hours of starting the event, the rains came, they hit that black cotton soil, and that just turned to, massive amount of gloop. And I remember remember on this, I think it was the second or third day of the event, we were going through a section where there was nowhere to put winches out to, no proper anchor points. The ground was really too heavy and thick to be digging ground anchors in. And plus you would be doing it all the time anyway. We didn't have the likes of, the pole pals or anything like that. Although I think the US team carried a pole pal.
Okay.
And I remember coming across the Canary Islanders and I saw these feet sticking out the windows because they'd been trying to drive through the night. They were absolutely knackered. Am I allowed to say knackered?
Yeah.
I guess I've said it now. Yeah. And I got up to the car and said,
much worse.
Have you? Oh, that's good. I got up to the car and I said, what's going on, guys? And they went, oh, well, we're a bit tired. There's nowhere to winch to and there's not another vehicle there. I said, but, you've got straps and ropes in the car. Well, what can we do with them? I said, you're going to pull it. And that's what I did. There was quite a few teams kind of stuck back to back. And I rallied them all together and I said, right, the only way through this is you're going to have to pull your cars. And that's what they did.
Amazing.
So, but that was at the beginning of the event. By the end of that event, we went from all these fresh looking, fairly pale looking folk who had not been in a jungle environment like that. And by the end of the 3 weeks of that event, when you came out at the other end in Burundi at Bujumbura, they looked completely different. The transformation was amazing. You had a really cohesive group, a team, and, further on, they wouldn't have thought twice about, we'll just get those ropes out and we'll just pull these vehicles through this.
Oxen.
Yeah, they were oxen, exactly. Camel Trophy oxen.
Matt, there's got to be some questions burning in your mind after loving the Camel Trophy.
Yeah, I mean, how did you choose the route for that? I mean, Camel Trophy I was alive, but very, very little.
Barely.
Very young.
Very, very young. So a lot of it for me, I never got to follow it necessarily. Yeah. I was more like G4 that I could follow and that kind of stuff. So when you're going to a country like, let's say Tanzania, what did you look for? I mean, were you going on roads? Were you, cross country, no road travel? What were the objectives? How were you planning that?
I mean, obviously, it was a PR event for, originally for cigarettes, then laterally after 1992, when they went through the whole trademark diversification thing because of the ban on cigarette advertising in Europe. It was an event to promote Camel Trophy watches, adventure wear, boots, bags, clothing, etc.
Adventure watches.
Named
by cigarettes.
Yes, I know. But they were quite clever in what they did because they knew the Camel Trophy itself. I mean, even when the first event started in 1980, which was run by RJR Germany, as soon as that Camel Trophy brand came out, as in the lozenge there, came out and that was put on clothes and other items, people were desperate to get hold of it because they knew if I have this badge on my, on my t-shirt, people are going to associate me with that great adventure that happened out there. It was subliminal advertising, obviously, for the company, but and some of the people wearing it probably didn't even smoke. I don't know. But certainly there was a hunger for being associated with the lozenge.
Camel for the longest time, I had no idea that the Camel Trophy was a cigarette thing.
Really?
I had no idea. Really? I thought it was just like camel. It's like it was in Africa. I was a kid from the Midwest. There's camels there, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, they saw that value in it. So choosing where the event went, obviously it had to be a challenging route. The countries themselves had to our first point of call when we started thinking about where would we take it would be to phone to try and go through the tourist side of things, because obviously the promotion of the event would promote the country as well. So you'd go straight into the tourist department of government and try and get to whoever was the director or whoever was in charge of tourism. And then it would be a matter of looking at where it looked remote. I mean, quite often it was just a map on a desk and, where could we go?
That looks interesting.
What's going to take us 3 weeks? Go out and start wrecking the routes. Tanzania, Burundi was actually quite a rushed event because prior to that, we'd been looking at going to India, up into the Himalaya type area up there. And they went out and did a recce and it proved to be too busy. There was just too many people about and it was difficult to get that feeling of remoteness. Although it is there, of course it's there, but it just didn't work for the event. So India was kind of knocked on the head very quickly. And I remember Ian going straight, literally, he came out of India back to UK for less than a week and straight out to Tanzania to look at a route there.
Where did you guys go in Tanzania?
We started off in Dar es Salaam and went through the Sulis Game Reserve, and then we went up into another one that kind of headed northwest up towards Burundi, and we just kind of kept on going in that direction.
Yeah, so, Matt just returned from
just got back.
All right, okay.
Tanzania.
Yeah, fantastic place.
So many animals.
A lot of animals. We didn't, there's times where we saw animals, and certainly in the morning after camps, you would see lots of footprints. And Tom Collins got some great stories about elephants walking through camp in Tanzania.
That's crazy.
But that was a challenging event because the rains hit so hard and then the convoy became split up. We spent literally days and days winching, getting through. And at one point we kind of passed fairly close to a railway track, which was quite handy because we had a gearbox going on a vehicle, and that had to be brought out from Dar es Salaam, a spare gearbox, which we changed in the field. Wow. And they brought it out in one of those little kind of carts that, inspection carts.
It's like a different world.
It is.
That's incredible.
The guys that made a cat scrape in the ground, pulled the vehicle over the top, dropped the gearbox out underneath. We got the spare one in.
Did you make the team responsible for swapping that out, or did you have technicians there to?
There was a workshop vehicle, which Land Rover had certain kit in. We didn't expect to lose a gearbox, otherwise they might have been carrying one with us. But then again, we could always fly one in if we could. But getting helicopters in Tanzania was a difficult one. And in fact, the last time I saw the helicopter there, he'd come in, I think, dropped Ian Chapman off, who was well in advance of all of us. He'd come in for something, went away again, and then that helicopter flew off and then crashed. So that was quite a close one, from the perspective of losing a major member of the team.
Yes.
Where was I going with that one?
Oh, the good stories.
It was good stories.
It was just a good story.
We got split up completely. Oh yeah, winching. We were in a big marshy area, but there was a railway track running alongside it, and that was really the only place where we could get an anchor point. So everyone kind of pulled themselves up to one side of it. We're hooking onto the ties on the railway.
Incredible.
And winching themselves along the side.
Incredible.
And eventually we got to some firmer ground and were able to carry on driving. But we ended up in a survival situation there. Water, we ran out of water. Well, ironically, because it was so wet. I remember filtering water through socks and t-shirts to get all the stuff out of it, and then we'd catadine into and that was just water running down the trail, and then we catadine into our jerry cans to keep us going.
Incredible. Thanks to this week's sponsor, GCI Outdoor. Whether you're heading out for a weekend of adventure in the woods or to your backyard fire pit, GCI Outdoor gear is ready for whatever you have planned. GCI Outdoor has been around for 25 years, so they know what they're doing when it comes to the best in portable recreation gear. GCI has innovative products ranging from outdoor rockers to complete camp kitchens and everything in between. And with a limited lifetime warranty, they stand behind everything they make. GCI Outdoor gear is comfortable, durable, and built for adventures, big and small. Try them out for yourself. Head over to their website at gcioutdoor.com and save 10% off your first purchase when you sign up for their email list. Thanks again, GCI. There is a story that I have heard about the Camel Trophy that I'm sure you can verify or
not verify
or dismiss. There is a technique that I heard that was used for a river crossing where you have all the vehicles on one side of the river and the river is essentially too deep to drive.
Yes.
And so they would get a boat or they would get people to get across the river to a big pulley block, and there'd be a huge rope. And then, so the rope would be now through a pulley block on a tree on the other side of the river. And they would hook 3 or 4 Land Rovers together. They would connect to the front end of one Land Rover. They'd all haul butt away from the river, and that would essentially ski the Land Rover across to the other side. And I'd love to know if that actually happened.
Yeah, it could have done. And certainly that's a technique that not so much to ski it, but a technique that you could have used to ensure that you got your first vehicle across, because you're using a much bigger anchor on this side.
Yes.
But certainly on really deep crossings where there was a risk that you might not get across or you're worried about the vehicle beginning to float off down the river, we would certainly have one vehicle going through with a line attached to another one at the back to either pull it back
Sure.
If we had a problem, or for it to be an anchor.
Okay.
I never saw that system of a pulley block being put on the other side and then say attached to 3 vehicles to pull the first one through. But certainly, if you think about it, that actually is quite a good idea if you had no other option of being able to get your vehicle through.
Because if you got it low enough, like on the front axle, for example, it would actually kind of pull like plane.
Well, I suppose you could almost plane them across. It's conceptually. But remember, those vehicles were so heavily.
They were so heavy.
Yeah. I mean, 4 people in them.
Yeah.
All the food for, up to 3 weeks, water, some spare parts. They were heavily loaded vehicles, well over what they should have been, really.
How much weight would be on the top?
Oh, top actually, we didn't have a lot. It
looked like it, though.
Yeah, it looked like it. Well, it was a pretty heavy roof rack because the whole thing was designed that we potentially could pick the vehicle up by the roll cage and roof rack. Because that all went through to the roll cage underneath, and the roll cage went through to the chassis. So it was designed specifically like that. So as if you had to, you could pick a trophy vehicle up by the roof protection.
So cool.
But the roof rack itself just had 4 Pelican cases in it, a spare tire, a kind of caged area with a bit of a tarp over it that you could put some of your recovery gear in, like the hook ropes that we carried. So we had polypropylene ropes with hooks on the end, which were designed as for towing or for using around a tree and stuff like that. In fact, our recovery gear was pretty basic. When looking at what we can get now.
Yeah, the innovations in the last 10 years even.
Exactly. And none of it rated. I mean, I look back on it now and go, oh my God, we were using unrated equipment.
Yeah, that'll work.
I mean, it did work. And we didn't have, Tanzania was another one. We did break quite a few winch wires. And I remember afterwards sending the wires back to Superwinch and saying, some of the ones that had broken, can you check these? And they all checked out okay. They then did a test on the Husky super winches we were using and came back and said, actually, our winches were pulling way more than what the cables were rated for. And that's why we ended up breaking on the event.
So did they upgrade the wire after that?
Immediately. Super winch were fantastic to work with on the event.
That's quite a winch, that Husky.
Yes, it's great. It really is. It's
worm drive, right?
It's a worm drive winch, yeah. So they were good. It was slow. I mean, previous to that, we'd been using Warren 8274s, which are fantastic as well, but a very fast winch. And actually for what we needed, especially with so many hands going into so many areas and so many people using the winches, having something slower was really better. Although at times, I can remember one section, it seems to be always going back to Tanzania, Burundi. We were winching across an area probably 150, 200 meters long. It took us the best part of 20 plus hours to get the whole convoy through there.
Incredible.
And, we managed to get the first vehicle across. And as that started moving across, you'd move another one in, attach a winch wire to him. He would then pull that out. Once that vehicle had stopped driving, he'd pull that out. Then you'd engage the winch yourself up to that. The next one would winch forward. And it was kind of a whole piggyback operation to get everyone through.
And how many vehicles were in the convoy?
Well, so you had roughly 18 to 20 competitor vehicles. Then we had 2 film, because we were filming it on 60 millimeter for advertising purposes and cinemas and stuff like that. So you had a film crew in those. 2 video vehicles. So that was all the PR and press release stuff that was going out immediately from the convoy. We had the ambulance. We had the communications vehicle, which was, SATCOM and HF and VHF radio. We had 3 coordinator vehicles. So 1, 2, and 3, lead scout, event manager, PR vehicle. Oh yeah, we had 2 photographer vehicles as well. So we had the basic PR photographer, Lee Farron was at that time. And then we had one for advertising photography. So there was Tanzania, Burundi. It was a guy called Hannes Schmidt, he still is a high-end fashion photographer.
Wow.
And his assistant in that car, I kind of lost count there. So it's some in the region of 28 vehicles.
Gotcha. Wow.
Oh, and then you'd have your raft unit vehicle if you needed a raft unit. So that was another vehicle. And on later convoys, they had 2 of those.
Wow.
So, and then the workshop vehicle, which had the Land Rover mechanics in it. So yeah, I mean, it was a big circus.
One of the things that's interesting to me is people can get so focused on heavily modifying their vehicles. But when you look at what was accomplished with the Camel Trophy, now it's often said that the Discovery 1 and vehicles like that were this kind of perfect combination of wheelbase and the way that they designed the body and everything else. They were just very effective from the factory already for technical terrain, but they had essentially changed the springs to take the load.
Yep.
but not really to lift it, only a little bit. As I understand it, they swapped out to the XCL tires. They fitted safety equipment and winches, and they went on some of the most remote, rugged tracks of the world, basically as a stock vehicle. So the question that I have for you is, what do you see as the most essential changes? If someone goes out and buys a new four-door Jeep Wrangler, or if they go buy a new 4Runner, what would you say, these decades of experience you've had traveling around the world, what should people consider, if anything, doing to those trucks?
That's a really good question. I mean, you're absolutely right. Our vehicles weren't heavily modified. It was a standard.
What, 30-inch tires?
No, it wouldn't even be 30-inch. I mean,
barely that. It was 7 inches wide. 7.0 R16s.
Yes, it was a 16-inch rim and a skinny tire.
16 plus 14. Yeah, that is 30 inch tire.
Yeah. So maybe it was 30-inch. So yeah, they had XCLs on them. They had front skid guard for the steering. There was no armor on the axles or anything like that. Standard heavy duty shocks built for a normal, heavier duty cycle in the UK on roads and whatever Land Rover would consider someone buying that vehicle would use off-road, which wouldn't be very much. Underbody protection on the fuel tanks. Nothing really elsewhere on the vehicle. The roof rack, a roll cage, safety devices roll cage, the bull bar and winch. And that was it. A roof rack.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about, could you do this event? Could you do a Camel Trophy in 2022 or something like that? I mean, would you be able to get those iconic images? Because, you had to put those vehicles in those precarious situations to get them through. Yeah. And now, you take a four-door Jeep and compared to it would be
four-door Jeep would be much more capable.
Yes. Yeah.
Although I'll say this is something that you are famous for, is that launch of the four-door JK in Africa.
Oh, yes.
The number of journalists that still speak in hushed tones about your trip, because they said it was unbelievable.
Oh, really?
So challenging, so technical. Well, for a journalist's trip, they said it was really unbelievable.
Well, we were the brief that was given to us. We're disappearing down another rabbit hole here.
I like that.
The brief that was given to us was we want a Camel Trophy type trip for this pre-production launch of this vehicle. So we went, well, we can give you that.
Where was it?
It was in South Luangwa National Park in Zambia, which is a beautiful, beautiful remote area, which is almost the same as if when Livingston walked through it.
Wow.
And it's just beautiful. When we started up on the Machenji escarpment, drove down from there, did some off-roading on the way. They were flown in a private plane, picked the vehicles up straight down to, we headed down the escarpment. We did some off-roading on the way and then headed to a river camp on the Luangwa River, which had been set up. And then that camp moved the next day. And then we got to the game lodge where we then did more. Well, we off-roaded all the way down. Yeah. It was amazing. And yes, it was challenging, and we had some instances, and but that's what they wanted. They wanted a tough event.
So I guess to answer your question, that if the OEM has enough fortitude to ask the question, it can be done. Yeah. And Jeep is, as far as I know, Jeep is really the last one to have asked that question.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't had another manufacturer ever say that to me. And Jeep were, they wanted to prove that vehicle was good. And I did the previous launch of that vehicle in Argentina, actually, which I know I've run across journalists who were on that trip, and they still talk about that one as well. But it was a great trip. I mean, anything in Africa like that is just. And
I distracted him from that important question.
Yes.
So
okay.
If you were to take a 4Runner or a Wrangler, what would you do? What would you recommend as 7P? What would you recommend people consider, if anything at all? Or you just say, go see the world.
Yeah. We're kind of keep it simple team. I mean, look at our own vehicles. None of them are really, really heavily modified. Nick's Land Rover 90, for instance. I mean, it's lifted probably got a 2-inch lift on it, maybe. He's got diff locks on it. On Trophy, we didn't have any differential locks. There was no slippery differentials in them or anything like that. They were open differential vehicles. When we ran, we were old school left foot braking. You want to stop that wheel spinning, use the brake, bit of throttle, off you go. And we still teach that technique now.
No one knows how to do that.
I have not heard of that technique. And so I've heard of it.
Yes.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I had a D1. Yeah. You never hear that stuff anymore.
No, you don't, because you don't have to. You've got traction control. Yeah. Most vehicles have got a diff lock in them. at least one. I think people can go out in the most basic of vehicles. I mean, yes, you have to prepare. You want to make sure that your running gear is good, and you don't need it. Probably the people at the expo would hate me for saying this. You don't need a lot of the jingly janglies that we see out there. I mean, we see so many trucks coming through, and you sometimes think they've just gone through the vendor area with Velcro all over them, and it's kind of
giant magnet
has just trapped everything on. I mean, I'm sure I saw a truck come in the other day towing what looked like it was a trailer, and it looked like it was a shower unit with there was an aircon thing in the top. It was kind of square. I'm sure it was a shower unit or a sauna or maybe a Turkish bath, something like that. But
does this Earth Roamer have a Turkish bath?
I don't believe so.
No. Oh, check that door.
But going back to your question, I think for me the most important thing is training. Get trained before you get out there. You've got to be able to you've got to have some information there to be able to make the right decisions when you're on the trail, and be able to make the right decisions about the equipment to buy as well. So that for me is the most important thing. The vehicle itself, the running gear's got to be good. Make sure that, tires, wheel bearings, differentials, your engine, gearbox, etc. I mean, that's what moves you, or that's what moves you once the floppy link is sitting between the seat and the steering wheel. And really, the vehicle as it stands there, looking out the window, we've got lots and lots of capable vehicles around us, but they're only as capable as the floppy link in there.
Yeah.
And actually thinking about it, some of the vehicles we see now are so capable that they can get you quite far, but then into really difficult positions. And now you've got to work out how, I'm halfway up a hill now because this vehicle with brake traction control or differential locks has crawled me all the way up here. And now I'm sitting sideways on this slope and I can't go any further. How do I get back down safely without rolling it? You will only know that if you've been taught the correct procedure to do it. Or luck's on your side when you actually decide to come off the clutch and the brake and you've forgotten to put in gear and you career like a toboggan all the way down the slope.
And that is the evidence from Camel Trophy is well-trained individuals in a solid stock vehicle on some of the most remote and technical tracks in the world.
Yeah.
And so that's evidence of that. And then it's also just more reinforcement of the fact that if you can get good training, like what you offer at 7P Overland, then people can do so much more with less. Yep. They'll understand what left foot braking is. They'll understand what to do in a failed hill climb. They'll understand what to do when they need to actually put that winch to use in anger to get themselves out of something. We talk about that. Matt and I talk about that a lot on the podcast. That's why we talk about 7P a lot on the podcast, is that people need to get trained. And you're one of the few organizations that has multiple trainers available. That means you've got this broad spectrum of knowledge. I was talking with Nick, your partner in the business, the other day, and I said, Nick, even though I've done this for so long, I only know 5% of what I want to know.
Yeah.
And so, but if you take a bunch of 5%
and add it together,
you have a very powerful team.
Yeah.
So you have Nick that has all this experience in the Sahara and in the sand dunes. And then you have you with all this experience with teams and people and technical challenges with stock vehicles. And you just add up all of this wealth of knowledge and you put all these guys together, and ladies as well. You have many ladies on your team as well. It's an impressive result, I think.
No, it is. And it's kind of that whole thing of the sum of the whole parts, I feel very honored to be working alongside so many people who've got so many varied skills. I think as the USP.
And you're all just nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it's when you let the ego go a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like I know a lot of 4-wheel drive trainers, and most of them are really nice people. There's some that are just like not the nicest people to be around. Well, like they're very preachy, they're very yelly, and I feel that can be intimidating to a lot of people. I think that's one of the things I appreciate so much about 7P is that you're all just friendly, nice, common sense people.
I always say treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. Number one, you don't. We're not a military organization. You don't teach people well by yelling at them or cussing at them or anything like that. We potentially are already in a high pressure environment anyway, trying to solve something. You're not going to achieve anything by getting mad at them. That's how we kind of look at it. And also, we also look at it, for me, every day is a school day. I was in a class yesterday doing advanced bush mechanics. And actually, as soon as I started the class, I was asked a question about repairing cylinder head gaskets. Do you know about doing it with savanna grass? And I went, no, I don't actually. Tell me more. So the class started off with one of the pupils actually talking about something he'd read in an old, I think it's Series 3 in Africa manual, Land Rover Series 3 in Africa manual, and repairing a cylinder head with grass. Now, I've never seen that. I'll have to go out and have a look at it.
How would that work? You just kind of cut it up and...
Well, make a gasket, apparently.
Well, I think it would be about weaving rings.
Weaving it around, yeah.
And then just pulling the head down tight on those rings, separating your combustion chambers or your cylinders.
I guess the piston would just chew through any of the grass that was, if it was in the sides.
Yeah. And it probably worked. Someone's done it, I bet.
Yeah.
But that's how the class started. So the class started immediately with me learning something new. And that's the other thing about all of us within 7P is that all our instructors look on it, every day as a school day. We can also learn from you guys. Yeah. There's no question in our world that's a stupid question, because very often that question that's sitting in the back of someone's brain that they want to ask and they think, I'm not going to ask that because it's stupid, actually leads on to, questioning what's going on, or could that work, or what is that piece of equipment for? So you've got to be open to all these things, and you've got to be able to debate them and go through the pros and cons and go, well, maybe that'll work fine for you.
There's always this feeling that people get that they just have this God-given ability to drive, right? Like they don't need training. Oh, I grew up on a farm or this or that. And I was talking with Chris Walker last night, about even me doing some more training, continuing education. I mean, well, Scott just did Trek.
Right.
And how long had it been since you used a high lift jack? And then I realized, oh God, it's been like years since I've used a high lift jack. I've forgotten so much about that kind of stuff. And even if you are somebody that has been overlanding for a while, has been 4-wheel driving for a while, it's been a lifelong hobby, you can always learn more.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah. I hired a trainer to show me how to use a map and compass again. I used to know how to do that, but to triangulate and how to pull a bearing on a map. And I needed to relearn all of those things. And it was totally a joy for me to retune those skills.
Well, we all get rusty with stuff, I felt coming into this show, having not done any off-roading and teaching for nearly 2 years, I kind of felt a bit rusty coming into this show, and as we went into the first classes of the day, I was actually really nervous.
There was a lot of awkward handshakes when everybody got in, like, hi, are we shaking hands? Are we fist bumping? I'm uncomfortable.
But true. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to that. There is people still a wee bit standoffish and stuff like that, and that's fine. But no, I felt nervous going into first class because I haven't done it for 2 years. Fortunately, it feels like jumping back onto a bike, and because the people who come to the show as well are here, they're here for one reason, that's to learn.
Yes.
So we don't kind of get numpties in the classes. They want to learn, and again, we're very honored that they're coming to us to learn about it as well. And that means that when you go into class, you're going to get questions, and the more questions that come out of a class, the better, because we've just got so many rabbit holes we can disappear down and then pop back out of and back onto the main subject of the class, and everybody goes away with stuff. I mean, at the end of yesterday's advanced bush mechanics class, I said to them, oh guys, one hack that I must tell you about, which is the super glue and baking soda one, and several of them went, oh my God, the money I've spent on this alone has been just worth learning about that super glue and baking soda hack.
You got to tell us the hack.
Well, you don't know it. Well, it's so sometimes when you use super glue, you go, oh God, I wish I'd fill that space a bit better, or I wish I could build it up. Well, if you take a drop of super glue, the first time I saw it was someone repairing the little nodule that holds the arms on Oakley sunglasses.
Okay.
All right. You know how that wears, and then finally the leg just falls off. Well, this guy took a drop of super glue onto where that peg was, dropped super glue, and then he dropped some baking soda on top of it. And then he did it again. And as soon as the baking soda touches it, it goes rock hard. And I mean rock hard. And so he just built up a little column of super glue and baking soda, and then he filed it down to a peg and clipped the leg of his sunglasses back on.
So you can build plastic, essentially.
Yeah, you can build plastic with it. It is absolutely genius. And I said, because we were talking about, what would you put in your kit to go along with your tools. So, we're talking about self-amalgamifying electrical tape, electrical tie wire, so as engineers tie wire that you use for drilling through bolts and holding them in place, cable ties, plastic and stainless steel, gaffer tape. Of course, everybody's got to have gaffer tape in there. All those bits and pieces. And I said, I now carry a small pill bottle with super glue in it and some of this baking soda.
Incredible.
So
now we know.
Yeah, now you know. Yeah. It's all over YouTube.
A pill bottle of baking soda could be a little bit awkward at military inspections in Baja.
Funnily enough, that because I normally keep it in my day pack, and funnily enough, as I was going through the day pack prior to getting on the plane, I pulled it out and went, white powder.
What? You could also roll it up in like a little bit of cellophane. That would never cause suspicion.
Oh, that's funny.
But the one thing I thought would further reinforce the scary white powder in the pill box is because I keep a Bic top in there.
Okay.
Because you can use the end of the Bic top as a tiny wee spoon.
Okay.
To drop it onto fine, if you're doing something really fine. And of course, that in itself looked a bit sketchy. So I thought, no, I'm going to leave that at home in case customs and excise quiz me on this.
Matt, what other questions you got for Duncan?
Man, I've just been a fly in the wall here.
It's amazing.
It's been so cool.
It's been amazing.
I don't even know.
Well, maybe we ask the one that we love to ask, which is if someone is about ready to go out on an overland journey, let's call it down to Ushuaia, and they don't have a lot of experience, and they came up to you to say, Duncan, you've been around the world. You've been doing this for decades. You've taught people to travel around the world. What couple of pieces of advice would you give me before I left?
I would say be ready to go with a sense of humor. You've got to have that. Treat people the way you treat yourselves, and that's really important when it comes to likes of border crossings and things like that. You've got to remember that, these folk probably aren't getting paid a lot of money. They sometimes get out of bed on the wrong side, or maybe something's happened at home and they might not be very pleasant when you meet them there. So you've got to be able to work with that. You've got to be flexible. You've definitely got to have a plan, plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe plan D. Be aware, not everybody's nice, but the majority of people in this world are nice people and want to help. But you do need to have a bit of awareness about you. Speak to other travelers on the road because they've always got current information. Engage with the locals. That's important. Try and learn a bit of the language. Start off and, good morning, good night, good afternoon. Some of the numbers, try and get that, try and immerse yourself in that local experience if you can. Be prepared. Yeah. Expect the unexpected. Get trained. Get some training if you can.
So true.
And learn about especially if you're traveling in a vehicle, learn about your vehicle. Get down to, I've said this quite a lot of times over the last few days, get down to your local garage, who would let you get underneath the vehicle. If you don't have a lot of mechanical knowledge, go and do a service on the vehicle with them. Have a look at bits and pieces underneath.
I don't know if you remember this, Duncan, but this was 2012 and we had the Expedition 7 trucks.
Yes.
At the Overland Expo at Mormon Lake. And we were about ready to leave. We were ready to leave. We had already gone down from Prudhoe Bay, but we were ready to head off to St. John's and start shipping the trucks around the world. And I asked you that question. I said, Duncan, what advice would you give me? We were standing there right in front of the Land Cruisers. And you said, be good with the locals. And you said, make sure that you have a good time.
All right. Okay.
Those are the two things that you told me. And what it made me realize was I had spent so much energy planning and so much energy training, all of these things. I had focused so much on execution of a plan that what I really needed to hear at that moment, and that's what you told me. And it's probably because you knew that you knew me well enough that you said, make sure you have a good time. Make sure you stop and, like they say, smell the roses or take a look at that sunset and enjoy the adventure. And I was very grateful for that advice because it was something that I needed to hear at the time.
Yeah. You had a lot of responsibility on that trip.
Yeah. And you do get bogged down with the planning. I think even on solo travelers heading out can get bogged down in the planning of it and wondering, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to manage that? Sometimes you just got to go with the flow of what's happening and
I think sometimes people can overplan.
Yes.
Oh, and I definitely did. And I just remember you just saying, I think you put your hand on my shoulder and you're like, Scotty, just remember to have
some fun.
Have a good time.
Yeah. And you certainly looked like you had fun on that trip.
It was an amazing adventure. It was an amazing journey for sure. And I'm so grateful for it. And we're so grateful for you having been on the podcast. I think we could have about 11-7 more.
Yes, we could.
More podcasts.
Let's do this again next year.
Yeah. Well, always happy to do that. No, it's been great fun. And it's, again, it's just fantastic to be able to take my experiences and hopefully, through the podcast, people are going to listen to this and they'll think about Camel Trophy. And by the way, there's a great book just been produced.
Nick Dimbleby.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Ours should be at the office by the time we get back, I think.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah.
I can't wait for it.
I actually helped, Nick sent me the proof of it and I kind of did the bit from, or read through and added more detail and corrected a few things from 85, 86 on to 94 or 95, which is kind of when I left the event. And I put in touch with some of the old competitors like Beppe Guillini, who I'm hoping to bring to the Overland Expo next year, who was on the 85 event. And also Beppe stands in two camps because he's a four-wheel drive expert, but he's also a motorcycling expert, he's got the world record for having competed in the most African safari rally on bike and having done 10 Dakars.
Incredible.
10.
Incredible.
Back in the day when it was mapped.
Does he still have knees?
Yes, he does. Yeah, and he's still instructing. He does a lot. He's a kind of brand ambassador, and he works for Ducati. Well, he also runs his own company, but he helps the development of the Overland bikes.
There's that bikes. New one that's coming out from Ducati. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. I saw the tease. That looks really interesting.
So Beppe would have been heavily involved in developing that bike.
It looks good.
Yeah,
it looks like a Dakar bike.
And what's the name of Nick's new book?
I think
something about it has Camel Trophy in the title.
It's got Camel Trophy in the title.
Is it Camel Trophy through the years?
Might be.
Yeah.
Or is that just...
We'll put that in the show notes just to make sure that people can look it up.
It will go here.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put it on a title right about there.
It's certainly got Camel Trophy in the title.
Yes, it does.
But it's out now. I think you can pre-order it on Amazon. But it's got a whole load of photos in it, which have never been seen before. I mean, I found stuff in kind of my archives of things that I'd picked up when I was at Camel, which aren't even, I doubt I don't even think that the negatives still exist for them.
Wow.
So I sent them down to Nick. So there's a whole load of unseen photos there.
Oh man,
unheard stories because Nick's interviewed a lot of the older competitors. Or not the older competitors,
sure,
people who haven't been interviewed, and including interviews with people like Duncan Lee, who is my boss at Camel Trophy, who is looking after Formula One and Camel Trophy. So
incredible,
some behind the scenes stories from there.
How do people find out more about you, Duncan, and how do people find out more about 7P Overland?
Our website, basically, just 7p.io, or just Google 7P Overland. The information will come up there. I think we're revamping quite a lot of the website at the moment, but any information on our trips and our training and stuff like that are there. From a training perspective, we do anything from really basic to advanced. We can tailor make training for people or companies. Same with holidays and stuff like that, or expedition style trips. So yeah, the information's there, or just if you're listening to us here and we're out and about on this at the show. But yeah, that's the best way to.
And then how do people find out more about you? Do you have an Instagram, or are you a much wiser soul than I am and not have one?
Yeah, I am on Instagram, but I haven't kind of worked out how to use it properly yet.
Good for you.
I do.
Reasons he's awesome.
I do Twitter, and it's just, I think my Twitter handle is just Duncan Barbour.
Okay.
It's usually, quite often, it's the view from my office today is.
I love it.
I think the last one was a picture out of a Caterpillar D4 as we're making the track.
That's
here.
good. That's good.
So I do Twitter stuff, and obviously some of that's film related, and some of that's off-road related. But I'm not. Yeah, it's finding time.
So we found someone at Overland Expo that is not on Instagram.
That's right.
I just find he's
the original influencer here. Yeah. So, well, and if you all didn't think Duncan was already extremely cool just based on this conversation, he also was part of the film crew for the Game of Thrones.
Well, so that's one of them.
I mean, what an amazing life you have lived, and this will be the first of many conversations we will have with you on the podcast. Duncan, you're such an inspiration. You're a true gentleman. You encapsulate so much of what we want this industry to continue to be, which is people being good to each other, not buying too many things, jingly janglies for their vehicles, and going and seeing the world. And you've done that for a lifetime. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely, my pleasure, guys. Thank you very much for having me, and I feel very humble with the words that you've said. I really do.
Thank you.
And I just want folk to go out there, have fun, be trained, make good decisions as to what you're doing, and have fun.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you for that.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan. And we will talk to you all next time.